Robin, good morning and welcome to the Manufacturing IT podcast. It's great to have you on the show. You and I spoke a little bit last year, and I thought who better than to get a guest on this episode, and we can talk a little bit about your thoughts for manufacturing IT. You're very involved in the sector and space, and I thought my audience would be keen to hear what you've got to say. So, without further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us all a little bit more about who you are and where you're working and what you do.
Hi, Daniel. Yeah, thanks again for having me. And I think there's a lot to discuss between manufacturing and talent and people, given that it's my core topic. Quickly about me, my name is Robin. I studied industrial engineering and management, kind of a double degree in southern Germany. I spent 4.5 years working at Point 9 Capital, an early stage venture capital investor focused on B2B, software and marketplaces, where I spent most of my time on manufacturing. And then I quit my job in the end of last year because I got so passionate about manufacturing that I want to dedicate my whole time to it. And throughout all the time when I was working at Point 9 and investing in various startups, one particular problem occurred to me quite often, which is the so-called skills gap, meaning that many manufacturing companies today already face a big gap in their workforce with the skills they need. And also with the skills they have today, and this problem only will get bigger. And many companies, at least from like what when I was talking to loads of people, did not really know how to solve it. And so I didn't see any solutions in the market. And yeah, I fell in love with the problem and basically started out in February now to work on Aveo. That's how the company is called, where we try to help these companies to solve the skills gap and uplevel their current workforce from within, because we really believe that learning and development is one of the key areas. And to finish up, I'm also writing about manufacturing since 3 years. I started a newsletter called The Future of Manufacturing with a few thousand subscribers. And yeah, this also, I think, was more like a coincidence, but it developed nicely. And I think that's also somehow how we got connected at some point.
Yeah, no, thanks for the intro. I think it's a super interesting space at the moment. There's so much kind of transformation as we kind of digitize more processes. But as you're dead right, the kind of skills gap from my perspective is something that I see firsthand on a day-to-day basis. The demand for engineers, the demand for consultants, the demand for deep knowledge in kind of new technologies is just not there. And you know, when people are hired, they add extreme value to the business. But it's really kind of closing that gap between what people know and what they don't know, and how we get them to the next level.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this problem, and it's a little bit unfortunate, but I think it is what it is. It's every market trend I know will just make the problem bigger, right?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we have new technologies, the world is moving faster, there's more competition. If you listen to Porsche, for example, they will tell you our new competitors are the tech companies. Apple is coming to Germany, opening up a big office. Ford built a factory here in Germany. Tesla, just 1 hour north from Berlin, where I'm sitting now, is building a factory, and they all compete for the same talent. And I think every market trend I'm seeing, at least, will only make the problem bigger. So it's fascinating to work on this, but it's also a little bit frightening.
Yeah, no, definitely. And for me, I've worked in the kind of German market for a number of years now, and I find there's some really exciting candidates there, some really exciting companies doing cool things. But tell us a little bit about why Germany is such a hub for these companies, and why so many of these companies are looking to build plants, or at least their kind of European campuses there.
If you ask this, I think what's interesting is that maybe today it is a hub. I think one question will be, will it be still a manufacturing hub, in the next 20 or 30 years? I hope so, but I think in order to be there, I think we really need to speed up on innovation, investing more capital into like new things, and also our people. I think Germany has a very interesting history when it comes to manufacturing. We have many household brands here. Automotive, of course, is like a very big and important industry also for our society. We gain a lot of wealth from these companies, and so there's a lot of like talent in manufacturing, and loads of engineers. We have great universities. Germany in general is like a big economy and just a big pool of people to employ. That said, I think it's also an interesting location in Europe, given it's quite central. There's a few key countries left and right, which also have quite big economies. And so today, I think from a strategic perspective, for many US companies, it makes a lot of sense due to these reasons. The question though is, how will this be in a more remote world in the next 10 years? And would love to hear also your thoughts. Do manufacturing companies actually hire remotely, or is it still, even though COVID happened in the last 12 months, is it still like a new thing? And do they try it maybe out? And of course, there's jobs, where you need to be in the factory. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting one. I think in some ways it's gone full circle. I mean, 12, 15 months ago, the world was shutting down, everybody working remotely. And that seems to be a huge pull for candidates. Can I work remotely? Do I need to be located in country? And where I recruit, which is specifically around the kind of MES and the integration of those systems, there definitely has been a trend where companies are allowing and giving the freedom for their employees to work remotely, to be based. What I'm finding is, as long as the candidate is located in country, which basically would mean if they needed to get to site quickly, that could happen. That's becoming quite a big trend now. What I'm finding from a lot of candidates, however, is that they're quite keen to be located wherever and to have that kind of maybe digital nomad background, where as long as they have their laptop and a good broadband connection, that they can be located in whatever country and plug in and do the work. But there's definitely a lot more freedom from companies now allowing that. And I think it takes a while for the trust to be built that companies can give their employees the trust and the empowerment to work remotely and actually to deliver. So as long as we continue getting good project delivery and capability being proven, long may it continue, because I'll be honest, from a recruitment perspective, makes my life a lot easier when clients are not looking for candidates in a specific town or city. It definitely kind of increases the talent pool, and I think as the world gets smaller with more travel and more kind of distributed teams, it opens up their talent pools as well to kind of get broader candidates who are located in different cities and countries.
Yeah, for sure. And if we come back to Germany, I think many of these companies, they are not located in the big cities.
Yeah.
In southern Germany, right? And there's a lot of companies that are really like in the countryside. And good luck hiring now, the best from top universities, when they have the choice to work for a big tech company such as Apple or Amazon, if they maybe want to work in a city and not move to the countryside. So I actually don't see any other way around than at least hiring some of the people when it's possible, of course.
Yeah.
Also remotely for these kind of companies.
But what I found also is that the more empowered the staff feel, so even just to kind of take it slightly away from working remotely, like things like giving employees unlimited holiday. Now, for some companies, they might think that all their workforce is just going to work fully on holiday, no productivity, everything goes to slow down. But what I found is companies who offer that actually find that their employees take less holiday and are actually more plugged into work. And it's kind of almost a reverse psychology, where giving someone unlimited something actually makes them want it less. And again, I think also the remote level, giving someone the freedom to work remotely, work from wherever, actually kind of make them keen to make sure they do deliver a higher level of work to kind of keep that perk and keep that freedom.
Yeah, and empowerment, I think, is a very strong word and a very strong opportunity you can give to people. And if you work in tech, that's something you take for granted, right? You usually have a lot of empowerment. You probably can choose what you want to learn. You can go to a conference if you want. You can speak up loudly. And manufacturing is still an industry that's very much managed top down, right?
Yeah.
Where people maybe do not have the freedom to, let's say, go to the conference they would like. They need to ask a manager. They need to ask for permission if they want to write a blog post about something, and so on. And so it's these little things, but I counted them a lot in the last few years, where I'm thinking there has to be a much stronger shift to empower these people, because if you won't empower them, I think some of them will leave for sure. And I have one very strong thesis, which is manufacturing companies, the only way actually for them to survive is to uplevel their current workforce, because they won't be able to hire the very best talent, and they won't solve the skills gap just by hiring externally.
Yeah.
Would you agree, or maybe you have a different view? Would love to.
No, I think it's really interesting, and naturally, as tech companies take more and more footsteps into towards manufacturing and sell their subscription models, it's far. What I'm finding, when you sell subscription software, it's much easier to scale the business. So what that means from a recruitment side of what I found is that these companies can afford to pay much higher salaries to their employees, where the manufacturing obviously you're building a physical asset or whatever it might be, it's a lot harder to scale the business and takes more time and investment. So there is starting to become a bit of a salary gap between the manufacturing companies and the tech companies. And as the tech companies take more steps into manufacturing, that gap might become more of an issue. So I think things like empowerment and giving people the freedom to have personal growth, professional development, and to kind of follow their own path rather than having this rigid top-down structure, as you mentioned, I think is a value add that can be quite easily introduced to the kind of working culture.
That's a very good point indeed.
I want to take you back, Robin, just to something you said. You said you're super passionate about manufacturing, and you and I have definitely had this conversation before about sexy manufacturing, it being interesting. But look, I'm really keen to know where your passion for manufacturing comes from, why you're passionate, and maybe if you can break it down into kind of the specific area that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question a lot because I had a lot of discussions also in the recent month with people where we discussed the question, why actually is manufacturing not cool? And how can we make it cool again? Because if you ask young people and if you ask, fresh graduates and so on, the share of people who want to work in the sector is definitely not increasing, rather decreasing, which is a big problem again for the whole industry. And it's somehow a little bit, it's actually very sad, right? Because it is an exciting industry. There's a lot of stuff happening. Everything we all have here, set up from the camera to our iPhone to the computer. It's all manufactured. Every part is somehow manufactured. There's a value chain behind it. There's a supply chain behind it. It's a very complex industry, but everything in the end is like somehow manufactured. And I think the industry, and this is a very, let's say, society point of view, but it has been a very fundamental and important industry for the people in Europe and in Germany. Where I think a lot of the wealth and why our society probably is where it is really coming from this industry. And I think in the next decades, if we do not help this industry to become more innovative, to become more digital, we'll lose a lot of jobs. And in the end, I think this means we'll lose a lot of wealth to other countries, which again, I think is a big problem for our society. And so I think what really bothers me is that for me, it's so obvious. For me, it's completely obvious what we have to do, but it really bothers me where we still stand. And I'm a bit fed up with, there's a lot of talking going on a bit about digitalization. I think Industry 4.0 is now 10 years old. And if you look what happened, not that much actually happened. And I know it's a very complex topic, right? And it's really not easy to do that. And I have incredibly respect from turning a very big company that has been working for the last decades with the same strategy and have been very successful. Now, thinking more radically how you actually see the future and how you maybe have to also empower your workforce and do all these transformations. So it's a super hard challenge, but I think there has been like a few wake-up calls in the last few years, and COVID again, I think was one, where I think the industry should move faster into a direction to become more innovative again, to empower more people and to become more digitally. Otherwise, this will mean we'll lose a lot of jobs, we'll lose a lot of wealth, and in the end, there will be, hopefully not too many, but there will be companies who will probably die very slowly and painfully if they don't manage to survive this transformation.
No, but I think definitely you mentioned COVID, obviously the last kind of 12, 18 months, maybe with COVID and the whole disruption that's caused it. I think it's brought forward a lot of innovation for companies and also advanced their digital transformation strategy. Now, one of the things I find really interesting is hearing about how these companies are transforming and the level of new automation and tools they're bringing on board. And I always find it fascinating to kind of be at the forefront of the kind of disruptive tech and such. And I know this is something you've done as well. I've seen a couple of the documents you've shared, which breaks down disruptive tech for the space. What do you find interesting about some of the new tools and some of the new kind of softwares and gadgets and bits and pieces that are coming into the space?
I think there's a big debate often about automating jobs, and robots will take all our jobs in the industry. I mean, you're trying to help to recruit people, right? So I think that this people won't become obsolete in factories anytime soon. Otherwise, your job would be gone as well.
Yeah.
I don't believe in this at all. I think the media is also drawing a wrong picture often, and also like let's say a picture, an image of fear, which I think is very misleading. And so what I actually really like about it, that many technologies and gadgets and also applications in the end, again, play a key part in empowering the workforce. to make, the job of the people easier, to make it maybe less repetitive, to help them to, let's say, stay healthy, because you have, for example, an exoskeleton that helps you, to lift very heavy weight. And so your back doesn't get hurt all the time. And so I think the combination of having people who are very creative problem solvers and can solve very complex tasks, together with technology that can enable, to automate easy to do tasks, I think is a really interesting combination, where I think manufacturing is one of the industries where this combination is most applicable, most likely. And I think that's very fascinating, together with the speed of how technology actually changes. And something that I'm very optimistic and also very bullish about, and this is more, I think, a long-term view, is the software stack in the factory. So if you think about tech companies today, all of them have kind of a software stack, from CRM, ERP, where they manage their employees, where they manage salary, and so on. And factories, it's still more like a LAN party, where kind of everybody brought his own server. They're somehow connected with each other. That's like how the machines on the shop floor are today. But I think what will be very exciting, once you somehow have all of this in the cloud, and you have a software stack within the factory, it also gets much easier to build applications just on top of this, right? Like you build an application for predictive maintenance, you build an application for predictive analytics, for I don't know, for your workers to read the manuals and so on. The problem is we're not there yet, right? Factories are not that well connected yet. You have to get the data out of the machine. You even have to first interpret the data to actually understand what it means. You have to build this data lake, the data layer, where all of this comes together. Some factories, I mean, you're recruiting for MES, people who work on MES systems. There's a big number of companies that don't even have an MES today. So that's where we stand.
I know it's crazy. So I spoke with Jens Woblayer from Werum or Körber Pharma Software recently, and we were talking about maybe only 40% of pharma manufacturers only having an MES system. So for me, it blows my mind that there's 60% of pharma manufacturers who are still implementing paper in the factory for process and everything. So it's crazy how in some ways companies have totally adopted and created a full transformation, and everything is automated in the cloud with IT infrastructure. But then there's companies who are still working on an Excel document or writing recipes on paper, and it blows my mind.
And I understand it somehow, because it has worked in the past. So what can go wrong? It has worked in the past, somehow at least. And manufacturers have been trying to optimize, from year to year and improve things left and right. But now it's a much bigger shift where, it takes some investment, it takes time until you see the value. And it's also hard from having this technology first kind of view to understand more the problems you need to solve and the value. So we were talking in the course, so I'm doing a course at the moment called Digital Transformation Manufacturing, where we talk a lot about the buying behavior. And many of pilots that have been done in the past few years have always been, or most of them have been, from a technology point of view. There's an interesting technology, AI, blockchain, IoT, you name it. Let's just try it and learn, and then find a problem actually that this technology can solve, rather than finding a problem first, or where there's a big room for improvement, and then going out and maybe seeing, is there a good technology or even a solution that can solve this problem how we want it. It sounds obvious, but it was the case. It's true.
I think it's a really interesting one, because it's the whole chicken and the egg scenario. Because in certain factories, if we do what we've always done, we get the same results. So there definitely is an inertia to change, and there definitely is a feeling that if it's not broken, don't fix it. So who leads the transformation? Is it the company selling the tech, saying, "Look, guys, in the factories there is a better way," or is it the guys in the factory saying there is an issue and looking for the tech companies to solve it? And I think that breakdown is something that I see sometimes between companies seeing the shiny new tech or hearing about what a competitor X, Y, and Z are doing and thinking we need to keep up, or at least have some skin in the game with an IoT platform or whatever it might be. But then it's really who leads that transformation and where the problem comes from that I see.
In my point of view, the most successful companies that are out there, they push innovation top down and bottom up, which means you have C-level executives who have a clear vision how to digitize their business for the next 5 or 10 years. And then they also, and again, we're talking about empowerment again, they empower their workforce, to work together on that vision. How can we digitize our business? What can we work on? They give them room to try things out, to experiment. They give them budget. And I think the only way actually is to have both top down and bottom up. If you only have bottom up, people will get frustrated because they don't get the budget, they don't get maybe the time to try things out.
Yeah.
If you only have the C-level vision, it doesn't work, because you need your people who are actually working on the stuff, who know how to solve these problems and who know the pain firsthand, and who can look for solutions that then fit together to accomplish this digital vision.
Yeah, no, totally. And again, as you say, it circles back to that empowerment level. If you're giving the employees the space to think about innovation, think about what problems can be solved, because often the top, obviously, the issues that at executive level are sometimes missing the understanding or the context of the problem on the shop floor or in the factory. So having the people in that space identify the issue and look for a solution, and at least feel like their voice is being heard, identifying a possible outcome or how the solution can be solved, it definitely makes a big difference, I think.
Yes, and some company. A new concept. It's not a new concept. If you think about lean manufacturing, that's actually what it is about, right? The people who are working on these topics actually can improve and continuously improve the system or the factory as a whole. So, and I mean, lean manufacturing is quite old today. So it's nothing new, but still, I think some companies still struggle to implement that kind of thinking or way of management within their company.
But is that a whole scenario? It's a case of, look, lean manufacturing was something everybody bought into and something that a lot of companies really focused on. But was that really a case of something they truly believed in at their core? Or was it a case of, we need to show that we're doing this to kind of look like we're a company for the future, a company looking to attract the top talent, and it's an easy badge to pin to the chest and say, we focus on this, we focus on that. But do they truly believing that? Is that truly kind of the core values? And is that something the actual staff really feel like, or is it a secondary priority?
I guess it really depends on the company.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Maybe I'm also too young.
Same.
80s and 90s, I didn't know, how it actually went on. I only know it from anecdotes and people who were telling me about it. But in the end, I think it really depends on the company, because I think there are some companies who really believe into it and really implement on a, let's say, company-wide basis, where they have like lean management training still every year for all of their stuff. So I think there's both examples, I would say.
No, agreed. And Robin, I just want to switch gears and talk about the skills gap. Obviously, it's an area that's close to my heart. I'm a recruiter through and through. I created a podcast to hopefully add value to the manufacturing community and kind of bridge that gap between manufacturing and software and such. And I really am passionate about that. And I know you are as well. So, what are you doing and what are your thoughts on that skills gap, and how do we kind of slightly bridge that?
So first of all, what's interesting for me is that many people talk about the skills gap and they somehow know or feel there is a big gap in their workforce. But then if you ask them, hey, what exactly is this gap?
Yeah.
What are exactly the skills you are missing? What are the top 3 roles you are missing? It gets very blurry and you don't get very precise answers. So I think it starts already with companies, managers have a feeling maybe that, their workforce is not complete, but they don't have a full picture actually what they have today and what they need in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's the first step, having this kind of like assessment, and it's very hard because I think it can get very complex. And the way I see it, how to solve it, is more focusing on career path and, like a few roles. I wouldn't make it too complex and break it down by very specific skills. So assessment is the first part. I think then the second would be like, okay, how do you get there? So if you know already these are kind of like the roles and profiles you need, then you can think about, okay, I can get there by hiring all these people externally, which in the end probably will cost you a lot of money, a lot of time, and you don't even know if it's possible. Or you can see, hey, I have a very good workforce today. They know the culture, they know the processes, they like to work here. Are there some of the people actually who I can get to these kind of roles? And this can be, by offering, let's say, micro degrees, nano degrees, working with education partners together. It's not, only like watching a few YouTube videos and then you already skills. I think it's a bit more transformative. So we talk more a little bit about, it's actually more reskilling than upskilling, I would say. And what's interesting, I think, is that sometimes people assume, I think, for example, let's say there's a big gap in software development, right? It's everybody knows it. Yeah, Volkswagen is very vocal about this. They say they need 10,000 software developers in the next few years. They won't be able to hire them all externally. It's just not possible. And even, and that's very interesting, I think, the chairman of Volkswagen, Herbert Diess, mentioned that to become a software developer, you don't need a degree today anymore.
Okay.
Coming from a board member at one of the biggest automotive companies, I think it's quite a very strong word, a sentence,
Yes.
which I think is really interesting. But what I say with this is, I think thinking about rescaling is something where we need to think about what are the skills that people have today and what are maybe adjacent roles where you can bring these people to. So I don't think, a 55-year-old machinist cannot become a software developer. I think it's probably impossible. And maybe there's a few where it is possible, but in the end, the skills maybe is too big of a difference. Maybe the person don't wants another job for the last few years she's working at. So, but if you think about, what are maybe some skills where people, that have today that can fit, let's say, to a role that is somehow adjacent. I think one example I always make is if you have truck driver will become more obsolete in the next decade to come. I think it's a fact.
Yeah.
And so maybe you cannot reskill every truck driver to become a software developer. But truck drivers are very good at navigating complex hardware systems. So maybe what you can do is actually reskilling a truck driver to become a drone pilot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit how we have to think about these kind of like roles. So you cannot, reskill everybody to become a software developer, but what are roles maybe that you need, and what do you have in the current workforce, and what are maybe some adjacent career path that you then can offer your workforce and work together with education partners basically to bring these people there. And that's a little bit, how I'm thinking about how we're also building our company. It's very early, but that's a little bit my thinking about how to solve this problem.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I saw one on LinkedIn recently about how kind of photographers who used to shoot, be it kind of nature films or whatever it might be. There was a guy flying a helicopter. There's a guy hanging out the window with a big camera.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last kind of 5-10 years or so, that whole job has completely gone, because now someone can stand on the floor and control the drone from their iPhone or whatever it might be. And that's how quickly the technology is advancing. So you're right. You kind of maybe not taking people from what they're doing now and completely bringing them to what we need, but there's got to be that natural conveyor of where can this person's skill set be utilized in the next generation of the workforce.
Yes, and I think there has to be a bigger discussion, and companies also need to discuss this in more detail. What are future roles that are needed? Let's say maybe there's something which is called like a digital twin engineer, or something like this, right? Or somebody who's working on, let's say, a vehicle data analyst, because now there's so much data in cars that you get autonomous driving and everything. So I think there has to be more people thinking about this kind of like future roles and what are maybe some of the core skills you need, and then understanding some of the career path, actually how you can bring people to these kind of like roles. And what it's interesting for me that some of the companies, the smaller ones particularly, if they think about training and development, they're just starting to roll out like a learning management system, or like some of the video courses. And of course you need to do this. I think employees are demanding this today, but I think this is not solving the core problem, right? It has to be more transformative. It has to be seen from a more holistic point of view. And I think the big companies, some of them are doing really, really interesting initiatives and doing a lot of stuff there already, but for the smaller ones, it's still like a very new problem. They also don't have the problem maybe to that extent compared to like the very big automotive companies, for example.
Yeah.
But I think they will all get there at some point. And I think the earlier you think about it, at least the earlier you think about, your culture, empowerment, the vision, all the stuff we discussed, probably the better it is, because you're trying to get more and more ready for what's to come. And maybe to finish up on this, what's interesting, I think, is many people think about transformation as one transformation. So we work on this transformation, and in 2 years we're done. Like you will never be done. I can tell you will never be done. Right? And this will be a transformation all over again. Every year you have to transform something. So you will never be done. And I think this is something which I think is also like some, part of the mindset that people need to have.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you mentioned kind of thinking about the jobs that will be needed, digital twin consultant. I guess from my side, I am seeing traditional roles still being there, of course, but I'm seeing now, new roles. And the one that keeps coming across my desk or people keep speaking to me about is the job title changes, but essentially an industry 4.0 consultant. And when we start scratching the surface, well, what does that actually mean? We're talking about someone who has a deep knowledge of manufacturing, a deep knowledge of IT, and all of the different technologies in between that. And I think it's a very hard role to get someone to fulfill, because you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of the times these consultants might come from a company who have done it a certain way. But really moving to a new company, it's a complete different idea, and the ideas that you bring are kind of maybe not as cutting edge, or not as relevant to the new company as such. And it's so hard to find these people. There's a huge demand for somebody who can come in and just solve all of the questions and just be the oracle and be the evangelist for this transformation. But I don't think it's as easy as that. And I think there might be 4 or 5 people that could be roped in to do that role, and rather than condense it to one person, it probably would be better to hire a team of 4 or 5, and let them all feel that they can bring their unique experience to do that.
For sure. And I think many companies, they won't solve this problem only by themselves, right? That's why they need to have partners, either for recruitment, where they work with you, for training, for learning and development. And I think that's also fine, right? It's such a big challenge that it's probably impossible to solve it on your own. Even though I think, and that's maybe a little bit German, I have to quote one founder here who sells a software. It's a guy from the US who sells software to manufacturing companies, where he says if he has to sell in Germany, he always has to do one thing that he calls rejection management. The answer he's getting usually is like, yeah, it doesn't work, or are we do it ourselves?
Yeah.
So, and I think it reflects a little bit the mindset of some companies. So I think there's some truth to it. And also I think, it's also, I think, at the heart of an engineer, they are usually a perfectionist, right? So it has to be perfect. It has to work very smoothly. And I mean, look at the cars, look at the machines people produce. They are perfect. So, I also understand where they're coming from. And again, it's a big mindset shift. I think now that, things just move faster. So maybe everything cannot be perfect anymore to the extent it has been in the last decade.
No, definitely, Robin. Look, and I think this has been a great chat, and I think this is a topic that will roll on, and it's a lot of stuff that we discussed that there is no solution to yet. It's an ever evolving landscape, and then I just want to finish on the fact that my audience are going to be keen to know more about your newsletter. It's newsletter I've had for a couple of months now, and I read the episodes and the articles, and it's really interesting. So look, to finish, please share a little bit more about your newsletter, and in the comments after I'll share where people can follow and sign up. But share a little bit about it.
Cool. Yeah. So maybe I start with an anecdote, because I started blogging about digital manufacturing in 2017. And when I wrote the first post, people were reaching out and like, hey, this is really interesting. Can you share some more of your readings, and a few links? And so initially in early 2018, I've just, shared a few links with a few friends, basically, of what I'm reading. And then suddenly more and more people signed up. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I, started writing a little bit more on a monthly basis, not only sending links, but sending, let's say, a quick summary of actually the post. And that's how the newsletter was born back then. And I started to call it The Future of Manufacturing, which is still the name of it today. And so it started growing over the years now, and I kept on doing it basically every month. And so the newsletter covers two topics, I would say. One is general news about the industry, some of, let's say, the big announcements that are happening, everything more on digital manufacturing, what maybe a new automotive plant that gets built, or some of the core problems like the skills gap. Recently in my last edition, there was a big article again about the skills gap and shortage of workers in the US, which, to quote it, is a $1 trillion problem. Quite a sizable problem, if you ask me. And then the second section is more, about industrial startups. So that's, where I'm coming from my work with Point9, the work I'm doing today. What's happening, let's say, with new companies in that space. What are some funding rounds? What are new companies that are born? Also, I think which is interesting, because it somehow fills a gap. There's a lot of, let's say, material out there on, industry 4.0 and future trends and technologies. But having this overview of industrial startups, what's working, what's maybe not working so well, where there's a lot of money at the moment, is somehow something that resonates with people, and that I send around every month, just to give people an overview of what happened in the last few weeks.
Yeah, no, and I find it super interesting. And what I'll do in the comments below the episode, I'll share a link to where people can subscribe, Robin. But look, it's been great talking, and you know, a couple of times we spoke. Now I'm enthused after we finished talking, and you know, your passion comes through. So look, thanks for joining us on. Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us on the Manufacturing IT podcast, and yeah, we're sure to speak again, Robin.
Cool. Thank you very much for having me. All the best.
My pleasure. All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye.